Lucy Primrose. It's absolutely fantastic to be here, and thank you to Seven Taps for allowing me this opportunity to share some of my top tips. So just to give you a little bit of background, I've been working within the L&D industry, actually specifically within the beauty industry, in retail for 22 plus years. I'm Australian. My most sort of recent job was with L'Occitane Australia. I was there for 5 years as the L&D director and international project leader. And then they asked me if I would like to relocate to New York to work in the Americas. And I was like, my bags are absolutely packed. So off I went, based myself out of New York for 6.5 years. My last position there with L'Occitane was Associate Vice President of Organizational Development and Employer Branding. So I looked after all channels from the retail field all the way through to the head office. My favorite probably being spa, but it was absolutely fantastic. I had a gorgeous little baby, which made me sadly hand in my resignation, and I moved to the UK. So I'm now based in the UK. I've been here for now 3 years. When I got here, I set up a consultancy and I started consulting for L'Occitane. And then I also got approached by a company called SquareTrade. Now, SquareTrade is actually an insurance company for consumer electronics and mobile smartphone devices. And when they reached out to me, I said, this is not my wheelhouse. I'm from the beauty industry. And they said, come in and speak to us. So I did. Their request was they wanted me to work on a strategy for Europe for their partnership division. They've got 22 partners across Europe, work in 14 different languages, and over 20,000 sales agents. And I was like, challenge accepted. The company is absolutely fantastic. So I was consulting for them. I've now taken on a full-time position as their senior HRBP business partner and organizational development. So I'm here today to talk about how to navigate and master retail training. And more specifically, we're going to look at how to navigate learning in an extremely fast-paced and a complex environment. Also, effective microlearning techniques to captivate sales teams' attention, because that's one of the hardest things to do. And then, of course, how do we leverage bite-sized learning to enhance skills, knowledge, and confidence, which ultimately leads to improved sales performance. I'd love to see a thumbs up for those that actually work within the retail industry. So we know the global e-learning industry is estimated at $23 billion US. It is absolutely ginormous. And there are about 300 million people who create learning content globally, obviously an estimate. That equates to 30 million course creations each and every day. And about 1 million training modules are taking place right now as I speak. And let's just say 50% of them are unbearable, which is very much a conservative estimate. Let me introduce you to a friend of mine called Mark. Mark works for a phone and consumer electronics insurance company, and he creates learning and development content for all of his external partners. And when Mark requested to have a look at his connectivity and completion KPIs from his partners, let's just say they were very below expectations. In fact, he found that most people were not doing them. Mark was facing multiple challenges. The first big challenge: insurance is not a sexy subject matter, no matter which way you cut it. I mean, who really wants to sit down and learn all about insurance, right? Not many people. He had to train over 20,000 sales agents. And when I say had to, I mean he actually had to. It's a legal requirement in order for them to discuss insurance with their customer. And the challenging part, the sales agents don't actually work for his company. They work for the external partners. And so insurance training was not a priority for them. The next challenge is something that we all face in retail, and that is a huge turnover of staff. On average, there's about a 40% turnover. And to top it all off, each of the 22 external partners had different ways of training their teams. So some had an LMS, Some had an LMS that was never even used. Some relied on face-to-face training. Some relied on coaching. The different avenues were absolutely endless. And of course, Mark was facing the challenge where not all partners had field team representation. So, especially in the more remote areas. So how do we access those people? The content Mark was creating as well was too long and nobody had time for it. So Mark had a 1-hour course on the products, like the insurance products, and then an additional hour, which was called compliance. Now, no partner was going to allow 2 hours for training on insurance products when they have a huge portfolio of different products and services that they all sell. And to top it all off, Mark was working in an extremely fast-paced and complex environment. In fact, he had 20,888 sales agents to train across 22 partners with only 54 field team members to train them throughout Europe. And he had to work in 14 different languages. So Mark was feeling stressed and, let's just say, a little overwhelmed by the whole lot. And then in comes you, an L&D expert, and you're going to show all the Marks out there how this is done. So let's identify you guys out there as the audience as Stephanie. So Stephanie, you're a great learning content creator and you know exactly how to navigate learning in an extremely fast-paced environment. And your strategy and use of microlearning results in powerful content creation, engaged sales agents, and of course, increased sales. And Mark's thinking, this is exactly what I need. Mark asked Stephanie, so tell me, what's your secret? What's your key to success? And this is when Stephanie changes Mark's world and begins by coaching Mark on microlearning skills that are going to inspire and enable his team to turn information into effective sales, which ultimately leads to increased dollars. And Stephanie begins by sharing her 6 golden rules for effective microlearnings. The first one, you need a story, says Stephanie, because we know that stories engage emotions and they also make facts a lot more memorable. And always set yourself a goal. And this is when Mark pops up and says, well, my goal is to inform people. And Stephanie says, we can do much better than that. So first, Stephanie explains and teaches Mark that you have to come up with one key idea. So storytelling that really relates to the audience and your key point. And he teaches him how to create a metaphor or a story to enhance all of his microlearnings and drive his key messages across. The second piece, you really need to have an end goal. So it's got to be training that motivates and inspires, because we're not there just to deliver a message. I always say, don't give people what they want, give them exactly what they need. So the goal is the purpose of the session. So for example, the purpose of compliance is not a long session on the do's and don'ts of compliance. It should actually be how you take that product knowledge and bring it to life on the sales floor compliantly. So we really don't even need to call the course compliance, because that course name is going to turn a lot of people off straight from the word go. And Stephanie continues to train Mark on effective ways to create stories within his training that will inspire, motivate, and drive the key message home. So keep your stories and your information super simple. People will only remember one key takeaway. So making sure that we're not force-feeding information in one course. And this is where microlearning is a huge game changer. Nobody wants to sit down for an hour. Keep it short, concise, to the point, and super simple. Also, your story or metaphor within your microlearning needs to be credible. People need to want to see the next microlearning. Make sure it's concrete, and where possible, add some emotion. We need to make the subject of compliance exciting and engaging. So incorporate stories into your microlearnings. They're personal, they're emotional, and that's what we remember. So it might even be the case that the only thing people remember is your story. And it's not a bad thing, because if your story is really relevant, it actually drives home your key point. And we tend to attach our own feelings to stories and imagine ourselves as different characters. We like to see characters who develop and overcome major problems. So an encounter, a challenge, is crucial when it comes to the elements of a story, and really important whenever we're creating microlearnings. And the second golden rule for engaging microlearnings is, of course, significance. So why do we create content? Is it to pass on information? Is it because our manager told us to? Or is it to make meaning? Of course, it's to make meaning. What's the subject matter and why it matters to you and the audience? And ask yourself, are you passionate about the content you're creating? So insurance is not sexy, but my goal was to make it really sexy. Like, how do we bring this to life, and how do we make people want to learn about insurance? Significance creates passion, passion attracts attention, and attention leads to action. And the third golden rule is structure. So structure is how you place the building blocks of your microlearning. So the building blocks of your story. Give a maximum of 3 to 4 reasons supporting your point, because the audience will not remember anymore. And it's time to think of the main message that you want to get across. It's the most important thing of a microlearning. Yet a lot of the time it can actually be completely forgotten. So put simply, think of the message as your one sentence pitch. And I always say to people, if you were to create this microlearning, but you got a bad cold, you couldn't come into work, but you needed to get it done, how would you tell somebody else to do it in one sentence? What's that cocktail line? What's that cocktail pitch? If you can do that, then you can create a really great microlearning. Keep simplicity, clarity, and essentialness in your mind the whole time you're creating content. And the most common communication mistake is relating too much information with not enough time devoted to connecting the dots. So lots of force feeding and very little digestion. And this is the sound of one room napping following an hour-long e-learning on compliance. And then the fourth golden rule, simplicity. And I love this quote by Albert Einstein. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. And it's so incredibly true. Moving on to the fifth, use multiple visuals, videos, and interactive elements as possible. I think 7 Taps is absolutely brilliant for this. You can see down the right-hand side, you've got all the different elements that you can include. It's really important that you change gears in order to hold the learner's attention. And then, of course, lastly, but most importantly, use real-world application. It has to relate to the audience. And this is where Stephanie went on to share an example of something so simple you can do in 7 Taps, like within like a retail environment, using the 7 Taps that you can see on the screen here. Stephanie created multiple scenarios. So the context of each scenario was created using the text and the visuals, and then using the AI video feature to replicate the response from the sales agent. So it showed what great sounded like. And best part of it was it's quick, it's punchy, it's interactive, and it only took a couple of minutes to create. And the fabulous thing is the translation feature, which meant that all content could be quickly and easily translated across 22 languages. So when it comes to microlearning, don't forget these 6 golden rules for a successful course: storytelling, significance, structure, simplicity, visuals, multimedia and interactive elements, and then of course, real world application. This is when Mark's feeling a little worried. He understood the 6 tips, he got that. However, he knew that there was more to it. And this is when Stephanie said, it's the application that counts. So you know how to build a great microlearning, but how do you actually apply it to the organization? The first thing is to identify your core learning needs. And Stephanie identified and split the needs into 2 pillars: business and people, for example. and then defined each of the pillars and what courses fell within each of them. And an example here within business is sales training. So how do you take the product and actually make it come to life on the sales force? And this here is when, if you have a look here, basically it's broken down into so many different micro learnings. So following the 5 steps of a sale, and then it just continues to branch off from that. So you need to break down all the micro learning courses that fall within it. Next, you need to look at the delivery methods. You need a 360-degree approach. So for example, here, if we looked at a train the trainer, so making sure that all of the sales, the people who lead the sales divisions within the partnerships got trained. This is through blended workshops, using session plans and a guide, and also giving them coaching tools. So using the 7 taps, creating different scenarios that you can use, and retention check quizzes that the sales team can actually use to train their sales staff. The next one as well is face-to-face training, so blended workshops, and then of course virtual sessions, so making sure they're really interactive, and again using the elements of 7 taps in order to do this. So by clicking on the QR codes, it's absolutely brilliant. And then the 4th one, of course, is the micro learning. And the great thing about 7 taps micro learning is that when you think about all those remote locations that you can't get to, you can. And you can post a QR code within the internal newsletter, email communication, or whatever form of communication is used. In fact, we created like really great little posters that get stuck in the lunchrooms, and at the bottom of them, you can like click on the QR code to learn more, and it will take you to a 7 taps learning. And then, of course, store visits. So making sure you've got a toolbox of support tools and retention checks, again, using micro learnings for retention check quizzes, interactive quizzes, and also mini micro learning courses that can be done on the shop floor. So now Mark's feeling a little more confident. He now knows how to make his content more inspiring by using a story or metaphor, and keeping the content simple, concise, and to the point, turning long e-learnings into bite-sized micro-learnings. And because his bite-sized courses are small, they're engaging, they're fun, they're relevant. So while Mark can't stop the high turnover of staff, he can ensure that the content is extremely flexible and accessible to all new hires. He's now going to start using a 360 approach to training, utilizing 7 taps across all of the delivery. And he also shared his micro-learning content in staff newsletters, which went across all the different locations. And to Mark's relief, he was able to overcome the challenge where partners couldn't give his training the time because he focused on micro-learnings to engage. And lastly, he utilized the great translation function available on 7 taps to ensure his content was accessible across all of the languages. And well, the 22 partners, as SquareTrade continues to grow, Mark is now confident that his strategy and microlearning techniques will support the growth of the business, resulting in powerful content creation, engaged sales agents, and increased sales. And that's it from me.
All right, Lucy. So first of all, thank you so much. Can we get a round of emojis for Lucy and that presentation? I've got to say, Lucy, there you go. I stopped you. Between the accent and then the story that you included in there, I had to grab some popcorn and just kick back and listen to that. That was legit. So thank you so much for your time and your presentation.